Good morning. It is the second Tuesday of the month, which means it's time for the monthly Feature Spotlight webinar. I should start, I think, by sharing my screen. And there we go. That's what we want to do. So welcome to the webinar. There are a couple of things to talk about. It looks like my alignment is a little bit off here today. So you will have to forgive me as I make a couple of quick visual corrections. Looks like my browser window got moved. Welcome to the Spotlight webinar. Today we have three topics to talk about. First, we have an upcoming feature in the product. It will be issued most likely in the next release for multi-factor authentication. We released 6.1.202 last week, at the end of last week, in fact, and we're going to talk about some of the features that are included there. With the multi-factor authentication demo, I'm not sure how much of these features I'm going to be able to demo for you directly, but we'll take a look at those that we have time to see. And then bug fixes that are included in 6.1.202, some of which are fairly important, which we will discuss in due course. But we will start by talking about multi-factor authentication today. In version 6.1.300 and higher, I don't know whether the actual release version will be 300 or 301 or 302, whatever it happens to be, it's going to contain MFA, multi-factor authentication for built-in accounts. I'm going to use MFA as a shorthand because it's easier to say. Previously, you could implement MFA, but it had to be part of your SAML or Windows single sign-on setup. So if you wanted to implement multi-factor authentication, you could certainly do it in your SAML system or whatever federated identity system you were using. You can implement it in Azure for Active Directory, and that all worked fine because for those external authentication systems, once you've authenticated into that system, multi-factor or not, that system sends an authentication header to Process Director that tells it that you're an authorized user and thus are able to sign in to the system. Process Director does not question that authentication assertion. It just accepts it. And then you can just go straight into Process Director. That's great if you are, in fact, using some sort of external authentication system. However, that was not available for built-in accounts in Process Director. There was no feature in the product to enable you to implement MFA for just your built-in accounts. In 6.1.300, that is going to be available to you. It is configured at the user level. Everything that we are doing in terms of MFA will be compatible with any Google Authenticator device or app. In my particular case, as we'll see in just a moment, I'm using Authy, which I think is probably about the most popular of the authentication applications. So that's the one that I use, and it's the one that many, many people use. So I'm going to be using Authy as my two-factor authentication app to provide the authentication token when I lock in. Authentication tokens technically are good for 30 seconds. In the real world, they're good for about a minute, because even though the authentication token changes every 30 seconds, there are times when there are 1 second left with your authenticator token before it refreshes, where you are trying to hit the enter button to submit your 6-digit code, and you may or may not hit it prior to the time expiration. There is a 30-second grace period. So for your previous code, it is good for 30 seconds after its expiration. So essentially, codes are good for a minute, which means that at any given time, the previous code and the current code are both valid inside that 30-second window after the first refresh. So you've always got a code that's good for a minute, and that is the grace period that we are implementing. I don't believe that in my version that we're going to look at, we actually have the grace period implemented yet. That is something that we're still programming. So I think I'm going to have to be sure that I'm within that tighter 30-second window to authenticate. But with all that in mind, let's take a look at how it works. So we're going to go to Process Director, and well, I got the location of the screen right. I just didn't get the screen size right. So here is my server. It's my documentation server. And I have my normal username and password. We're all prepped to log in. And so I just click the login button, except it doesn't let me log in yet. The screen refreshes and it is asking for my MFA verification. It needs the authentication code or token that is generated by my MFA app. Now, in my case, on my phone, I am running Authy, as I said previously. And so I can look here in Authy and I can see, well, that's probably an older code because my phone is now shut down. Let's refresh my phone. So here we go. I have 14 seconds to type in the new code into the system. So it is 983325, 983325, and we'll hit login. Did I make the time limit? Yes, it looks like I did. I've made it under the time limit. So I can now get rid of Authy. I've logged in. I'm fine. Well, I can't get rid of it because I'm going to need it in a minute. So that is the login experience with MFA. It is always going to ask me for that code, and that code has to come from some sort of authenticator device or authenticator app, usually located on a second device. In my particular case, it happens to be on my phone, although I do have Authy also running on my iPad. And so whatever device I happen to be close to, whichever the two mobile devices that I have, I always have access to Authy, and I can always log into any of the sites that I have set up. And I have quite a few sites set up actually to do multi-factor authentication. For me personally, if multi-factor authentication is offered, I always accept that option. It's a much more secure option because you got to have this or you're not getting into any of my accounts. Without that authorization app, which is generated via a unique generator using the Google Authenticator system. So it assigns a unique, it's not really a one-time code because I could use it theoretically multiple times in 30 seconds. Technically, as a practical matter, I probably wouldn't be able to do that. I just wouldn't be able to do it fast enough. So basically, it's like a one-time cryptographic pad that is just going to send this authentication token. Without that token, I cannot log into the system. So how am I going to implement it as a Process Director system administrator? Well, we're going to go into settings and we're going to go into user administration. Now, in this case, I have Barb set up so that I can apply the MFA to her account. So we're going to look at Barb's account. There's a couple of things I want to note here. One kind of gets ahead of myself and talking about the new features of 6.1.200. Since we're here already, let me take a brief departure from MFA and just talk about these three new buttons that now show up on the edit user page for the user profile: the modify user ID, username, and modify email. All of the fields for the top line are now disabled by default. The reason they are disabled by default is to prevent password managers like LastPass from inadvertently changing user IDs, usernames, or email addresses, or what have you. If you have LastPass set up on your computer and you have it set to, autofill usernames and passwords, which a lot of people do, Well, that's great if you're logging into a website. Not so great if you are logging into a website where you have access to other people's usernames and passwords and email addresses, because LastPass will just assume that you want to replace your user's username or email address with your username and the email address, and it will overwrite those values. And if you scroll down to the bottom and you hit OK, that's going to cause bad things because you're going to change some of this data up here at the top. So in 6.1.200, there are a number of fields, both here and in, I believe, installation settings, where the fields are now now unmodifiable by default. You actually have to click the button to select the field and make it active so that you can modify it. You click the button again and it deactivates the field. So that's a new feature. It's basically an anti-LastPass or LastPass protection feature to prevent LastPass from helping you whenever you open up someone's account. Anyway, back to MFA. So at the very top, you've probably already seen it while I've been talking about something else, but there is a new property called Enable Multi-Factor Authentication. So as part of the user creation process or user editing process, you can simply turn on Enable Multi-Factor Authentication, and that will set it up for the user. Now, there is another button here called Reset Multi-Factor Authentication. The way that the Google authentication system works is that as an end user, I am granted a sort of unique, I guess you could call it a seed. And what this seed does is it sets the algorithm that determines what the 6-digit code is going to be every 60 seconds. Once I set it, and with that seed, then everything else happens kind of automatically. It does all of the cryptographic stuff it needs to generate this new code every 30 seconds. However, if I lose my authenticator device, or I inadvertently get rid of Authy for some reason, whatever the thing may be, well, I don't want other people who now have access to my old authenticator to be able to log in. So what I need to do is click the Reset Multi-Factor Authentication. That will invalidate the seed that was used to create the algorithm to generate the 6-digit code every 30 seconds, which means that none of those old codes from the old system will be valid. So I could click Reset Multi-Factor Authentication, and technically, even if I had my own device and I recovered it, that's too late. Once that Reset Multi-Factor Authentication button has been clicked, I'm out. And this code is no longer going to work on the system. I'm going to have to completely regenerate my authenticator account for this particular server in order to get back in via MFA. So that gives us a little extra security there. So if somebody reports a device lost or whatever, we can just immediately reset their multi-factor authentication. And even if someone does have their old device, I'm going to just crack into it and get into their authenticator app, they still won't be able to log in because we have now invalidated that seed that was used to start creating the codes. Of course, this doesn't work because this user has not set up multi-factor authentication yet. We've turned it on, but we haven't even saved their account. So we're going to do that. We're going to update the account. And now to log in, Barb is going to need to set up MFA for herself. So I'm going to hit OK here, get out of Barb's account, and I'm going to log off as me. And I'm going to need to log back in as Barb. So her username is Barb, and I reset her password just this morning. If I can remember what I reset the password to, let's hold our fingers that I have the right password. Let's log in. Okay, great. We were able to log in, and in fact, so that we can see both of these things at the same time, I'm going to make my I'm going to make my window a little smaller here. Sorry, just give me a second. Let me not save that in LastPass. Let me go to a smaller window, maybe not quite that small, but smaller. And then we can drag my phone over here so we can see both things happening at the same time. So what I see now that I've been set up inside of Process Director to set up my MFA, now the user needs to create their MFA account to generate their login code. There's two ways of doing this. The easiest way, and the one that I'll be demonstrating, will just be to use your phone or tablet's camera to read the MFA code that is incorporated into the QR code that you see on the left side of the Process Director screen. Now, some authenticator apps don't do the QR code deal. There are more limited devices, and they'll require that you enter a manual code into the device to create the setup. In fact, I think you can manually enter the code in Authy. Now, to create my account, because I can't do anything yet, I've got to create that account. I'm going to need to take my phone and open up Authy. And in my case, I'm just going to go down here at the bottom and I'm going to click the Add Account button. And notice as we look at Authy, and I was correct, you can do it manually. Well, this recording button is showing up there, and I wish it would go away. Or I wish I could, well, I can move it. So let's move it here a little bit. Note at the bottom, it does say enter key manually. So if I had no QR code, if I just wanted to send somebody this 16-digit code that appears over here on the left-hand side of the screen, I could certainly do that, and that key could be entered manually. In my case, I don't have to do that. I can scan the QR code. So I can just click the Scan QR Code button, and it'll open up my camera. And, well, it automatically read the QR code. It's adding the account now. And now it's having to talk to Google, and Google will in turn talk to Process Director to tell it that this account now has MFA set up, or at least it's getting set up. It's taken a while, but finally it did it. We're just going to go ahead and keep that generic logo. And so we'll click on that logo. I think in this case, we'll go with a nice purple for the logo for no particular reason at all. And then I'll hit the continue button. And this tells me this is my Barb account on BP Logix documentation. This account nickname, by the way, is fully fungible. If I want to edit that nickname, I certainly can. I'm happy with it as it is, though. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. So Barb's account has now been added successfully to Authy. And if I look down at the very, very bottom, I can see the purple key logo. By the way, Authy has a whole bunch of different logos. So as you can see, all my other accounts all have unique logos. So we don't have a logo, I don't think, but you can use one of the logos as I've done. Now, as you can see, I now have an authentication token. It has been generated. I'm still not into Process Director. I haven't enabled the two-factor authentication yet, which I can do relatively easily simply by typing in 139378 and enable two-factor authentication. It has been enabled. I'm in. Let's prove it. Let's log out as Barb, and we'll log back in real quick. And again, that's the password, I believe. We'll log back in. Now it's going to ask for my multi-factor authentication to log back in. And so I have to type in at this point. At this point, I'm going to wait 3 seconds because, as I said, I don't know if the grace period works on this particular machine, but now I'm in the new version. I got 30 seconds now. So 693506 and log in. And once again, I'm logged in as Barb. So now Barb has a valid account in the system and has a valid two-factor authentication login. And now, at this point, if I go back into Barb's account, Now my reset multi-factor authentication button works because Barb now has an active MFA account on the system. So at this point, I can simply delete that seed and I can invalidate her current MFA account simply by clicking on that button. I'm not going to do so because we're already 20 minutes into this and we just covered MFA, but that is the main point of Process Director, at least for this webinar, is the addition of MFA to all built-in user accounts, which is going to make user accounts, I believe, significantly more secure if you implement that. By the way, the reason that we're implementing it is because of some new security rules, especially in the European Union, that are requiring much more secure logins as part of the Data Protection Act. I believe it's GDPR on the continent. I'm not sure what they call it in the UK. Doesn't matter. Process Director will be compliant with it because MFA is basically the de facto authentication requirement now in the European Union, or certainly in Great Britain. And so it's now just going to be part of the product, which I'm happy about because I use MFA for everything. So if I have it available, I'm certainly going to use it. So at the end of last week, I think it was Thursday, maybe it was Friday, don't remember, that was so long ago, we released version 6.1.202. There are some new features for that. And in the interest of time, I think it's going to be a little harder for me to demo all of them. First of all, when we released the application, we also released a new version of the custom tasks. There have been some improvements to some of the custom tasks. There were some changes we made to item actions. So I would suggest that certainly when you install version 2.02, that you install the custom tasks for it as well, just to be sure that everything is updated. It is more or less a coincidence that the custom tasks were released right alongside .202. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes we release both together. But obviously for custom tasks, you do want to regularly go back and look at the support site because custom tasks are updated on a completely separate cycle, usually from the product. And there may be a number of iterative custom task changes before we release a new version. And by the way, vice versa might also be true. We might release a couple of versions before we update or feel a need to update any of the custom tasks. So they are independent of each other, but in this case, they happen to be both released on the same day. So something to keep in mind if you haven't updated your custom tasks in a while, even if you're not going to go to .202, you may want to look into updating your custom tasks. The data list control. In the previous version, the data list control worked, and you could select as many rows as you wanted in the data list. We have now added a max rows property to the data list so that you can select 1 to n number of rows as a maximum number of rows. So if you only wanted to allow users to select one row, then you could certainly do that simply by setting the max rows property. To the extent that we can do this real quickly, and again, I'm looking in the interests of time, we'll go to the data list. It should be on here because this is a more advanced version. Data list. I know I have a data list on here somewhere. Here's a data list form, so it will have a data list control on it somewhere. So we'll just go into the form design, and we actually want to look at the control properties for the data list control. And right here is the new property. It is called max rows, and you can set that to any integer number, and that will determine the maximum number of rows that your end user can select at runtime. Timeline activity configuration screen UI. Now, this is not really a feature update of any kind. However, it is a visual change. So we'll just open up a random timeline somewhere here, and we'll open up a timeline activity. And as you can see, we have eliminated the dark gray or medium gray background. This is much more legible, I think. It fits in much better with the aesthetic of the product. So we've, added the blue roundy buttons and added a blue border here, removed the black border, and removed that gray background. So I think it just makes the configuration of your custom or your timeline activities a lot more legible, and just has a better, more cohesive look and feel that is more in line with the aesthetic that we're looking at in the new UI. The provision user CT we have added. I don't know whether this is a feature or a bug fix, but previous versions of the custom task did not include the business unit field when you were provisioning users. All of the other fields were there, but for whatever reason, the business unit field was not. It is there now. So you can obviously get the new provision user CT, even if you don't upgrade to version 2.02, and you can have that available for you. The content list has been changed. I know we talked about this last month, but we didn't have in the content list, we didn't have all of the objects inside the filter dropdown. So we've added the appropriate objects here now so that you can filter for, any specific type of object that you want to filter for. We've added basically all of the appropriate objects into that filter dropdown. Some improvements in content list search. We talked about that I believe last time as well, where if I want to search in the content list and I want to pull, since I have something open here, let's pull it. I have the process ID, which is its GUID. So if I wanted to find, and I knew what the GUID was, and I wanted to find a specific item, I could just find that item. It would find it for me automatically just by throwing the GUID in. This is going to be far more helpful for more hardcore developers than it would be for anybody else, but it is available there. The other thing that is cool that I do like is that we have put the X button into the search box, so I don't have to manually delete my search term anymore. I can just click the X and get rid of it. So that is a new feature that we added as a content list search improvement. Properties disabled by default. I'm not entirely sure what I meant by that. Oh, I did. Yeah, I do know what I meant by that. The properties, those properties that I showed you earlier for the username and the email address, and inside installation settings, it keeps taking me to a place I don't want to go. And inside installation settings, which is one of the other major areas which it can cause a huge problem, is your SMTP user ID and your SMTP password. We don't want LastPass helping us with those two items either. So in addition to the user properties that are disabled by default, these properties on the installation settings page are also disabled by default as well. Also, a lot of performance improvements. There's obviously nothing I can demo for that, but we have added a lot of performance improvements to the product in terms of how long it takes for knowledge views to return records. We've gotten rid of a lot of extraneous queries that we no longer need to run, but that we're running basically because of some legacy concerns. And we've tightened up several performance issues on the product. That performance improvement on the product is one of our primary and major initiatives as we move forward with the new UI and new features. Finally, bug fixes. There have been several of them, the most important of which is the stream actions bug that was introduced in 6.1 something, and probably just 6.1.0, actually 6.1. There were a couple of bugs associated with stream actions. They would kind of work, but not in the way that you would expect. For example, it would submit the form, but the form wouldn't get marked as submitted. Your process was running, but your form wasn't listed as submitted. It was a little confusing. So we've had to go back in and fix those stream action bugs. Another one, which you might not notice unless you're actually using metadata on your system, was that KView category navigation was broken, as was in-place editing if you chose something other than the default process director style. There was a style clash between all of the styles except the built-in style, the default style. There was a basically a clash in CSS, a display clash where it just simply wouldn't display the in-place edit buttons. So that was fixed as well. And for the category navigation, if you were trying to use metadata navigation to navigate to different items on your system based on their metadata categories, the category navigation simply wouldn't show up in the knowledge view. But both of those have been fixed, as have several other various display CSS and UI issues in the product. Case navigation, I have this listed as a bug. I'm not entirely sure that it is a bug, although it was very inconvenient where case navigation would always sort of drop you back in your default workspace, which may not have been where you wanted to drop back into. So now we're sort of tracking what you were last looking at. When you close out a case, it drops you back to where you previously were. It doesn't drop you back into your default workspace. So improvements in case navigation. Some data list issues. There were some data list issues with exporting and the export not working properly, like trying to, I don't remember which export it was, whether it was the Excel or the PDF, but it wasn't working the way that was expected. And there were a couple of other things where when you tried to clear the data list, it wouldn't clear the data list. So setting it to an empty string wasn't actually clearing it. So there were a couple of issues, relatively minor ones, that are fixed in this version of the product. We've done more work on those server communication banners that you've been seeing on the newer versions where it says server communication error. I'm quick to point out these server communication failures, and I think the actual verbiage is failed to communicate with server. These failures in general have always been happening. We just weren't telling you that they were happening because some of them aren't important. So in the new reporting system that we've placed into the app, and it gives you, I think, better notifications of things that you need to be notified of. In this particular case, it was notifying you of things that have always happened, but that you don't care about because some server communications errors are expected and indeed wanted, and it was over reporting. So it wasn't reporting anything new. There's nothing happening now that wasn't happening before. The only difference is that you're being made aware of it, and being made aware of it a little too much. So we've gone and tweaked that a little bit. Another error, relatively important, that you would find whenever you were editing forms, especially if you deleted a form field and then put a new form field on the form, but gave it the same name. System got confused about any properties of that old form field that were not recreated in the new form field. It was having a trouble connecting the old form field via name to the new form field. And especially if you had any conditions set on that old form field, they wouldn't exist on the new form field, and the system went a little wonky and it wouldn't let you save the form. And you would get this error, object not found, get condition set. And then it would tell you that, condition for control ID, whatever. And then it would show you a GUID. So I can't figure out what you wanted to do here. Usually resolved by exporting and re-importing the form. It's still tedious and awful. So we have fixed that so that whenever we do that sort of deletion, recreation, and renaming to the same name, we don't see this error anymore. So we've addressed that in .202. So there are some important bug fixes in .202 that make it a prime candidate for those of you who've run into any of these bugs to consider as an update to your existing system. As always, if you are going to update Process Director, we do recommend that you update your dev/staging systems first and that you test them adequately before implementing the upgrade on your production system. That's always a best practice. And with that is all I have for you today. So we are going to conclude this webinar. I hope you have a great month. I look forward to seeing you next month. For those of you who attend the training webinar, I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. So long.